hope, yeah, it works, okay. So good morning, a very warm welcome from me as well. As Van already said, I will give you a short introduction about what DGT is doing, what DGT is, and specifically about our outsourcing activity. So DGT is one, although the largest language service of all the language services working for the European institutions. We have around 2,200 internal staff and around 600 external partners translating for us. So DGT deals with written communication for the European Commission. So that means we are only translating for the European Commission, not for other European institutions or any external bodies. We are, or with the 2 million pages we translate annually, we are the world's biggest translation service. Currently, we outsource 30% of these texts. We outsource more or less all kinds of text, except very sensitive, restricted texts, or texts with very short deadlines, where outsourcing is just, from the logistical part, is not possible. Our requesters are the DGs of the European Commission. And that means that due to the political nature of the work of these DGs, these translation requests show high and, yeah, I would say even unpredictable monthly fluctuations. And due to the political priorities, these translations also imply that we get a lot of versions because they are changed in the process of the political decision-making. The texts cover a wide range of subject fields, so all the fields where the Commission has the right to initiate legislation. So it starts with development and cooperation. We have texts about economic and monetary affairs, energy, research, customs, food safety, so it's nearly everything. But this also means that these texts are often very technical, highly specialized, and they are more often than not legal texts. The languages we need are primarily the languages, the EU official languages. So most of the translations go into and out of English, German, and French. In some fields like trade or development, cooperation, we also need translations from or into non-EU languages. For instance, Chinese, Russian, Arabic, these are the most common ones under the more exotic languages. So as I already said, most of our texts are legal ones. And the fact that every language version is equally authentic and is legally binding implies that, in fact, the translation activity is legal drafting. And this means that these texts have to be of a very high quality and they have to be delivered in time so that they do not have severe legal consequences if these texts are not submitted due to the deadline. A few words about translation trends and about the productivity, not the productivity, the production, sorry. As you can see, between 1997 and 2018, the production volume nearly doubled. There was a big increase as from 2004 due to the accession of 10 new member states. Of course, this had also a consequence for the outsourcing, because as you see from the table, also the outsourced documents doubled. Another development we saw is that the ratio of English originals doubled, and this has also something to do with the accession. We observed it already when the Scandinavians and the Austrians came in, and it became really apparent in 2004 with the new member states, where the English became the language of the originals. Because before, when I started, it was in 1989, 80% of the originals were still French. So that was a very big change. This change also is seen in the documents outsourced. As you can see, the ratio of the English originals outsourced raised, whereas, for instance, for the French, there was this sharp fall in 2004 again, whereas the German was more or less stable at a lower level, and the other languages came in. So now to give you a bit an impression about what this means in pages, you see here in 2018, out of the more or less 600,000 pages we outsourced, nearly 500,000 were English originals, where the Germans had a ratio of 11,000, French 26, the other languages around 64,000, and then we have this tiny bit of nearly 1,500 for the new EU languages, so for the exotic ones. For the last slide, here you see that you have the same trend for the target language. Also there, the translations into English are mostly requested, followed by the French, the Germans. The rest, they are between 20 and 25,000. An exception is still the Irish, the translations into Irish, but this is due to the Irish derogation, which is still in place. So this was my part. I now hand over to my colleague, Mrs. Garcia Soriano, and she will tell you a bit about the procurement rules we have to apply.
Thank you, Kirsten. Good morning, everyone, again. I'll make a brief introduction about the rules we have to follow when we do our shopping of translations. As a public body, we are obliged to do it through public procurement. So we have to follow the financial regulation. This is its latest version. It's a very complex and extensive set of rules that was never conceived actually to buy intellectual products like translations, but we have to use it and adapt it to the best. In particular, Annex 1 sets the common provisions, the procurement procedures. It's about 400 pages altogether. And then we have a vademecum, which is an in-house guide to clarify whatever is obscure in the regulation. We also have to inspire ourselves from the EU case law on procurement, that is about well, I've never counted, but certainly over 1,000 pages. And still sometimes we need a legal advice, so we request often to our lawyers to help us to interpret the rules so that we don't make many mistakes. As you know, public procurement is a very sensitive issue. You find often on the national press cases of manipulations of public procurement, so we have to really be very careful so that everything is justified and traceable. So Article 160 of the Financial Regulation sets the principles. They are common to any other public authority that is dealing with a public budget raised by taxpayers' money, your money. So transparency, proportionality, equal treatment. These are the rules, and this is the same as saying no discrimination. So the article says very clearly that all contracts shall be put out to competition on the broadest possible basis. This means in practice for you that every time that we launch a new procurement procedure, all tenderers, be them new or current contractors, are on an equal footing. So we cannot favor current contractors for the fact that they already have a contract, because that would be a breach of equal treatment. And a way to preserve the consistency, the integrity and accountability of the budget, which are the main principles of sound financial management, is doing it like this. We have a big volume, and the volume is growing, so we cannot choose the kind of procedure. This is set by the financial regulation. It is, most of it, the open procedure, which is the most complicated, the most cumbersome, but also the safest. So 90% of our spending goes through framework contracts, which are the result of the open procedures. This is, of course, used for the most common language combinations, where the volumes are higher. When we have small volumes with exotic language combinations, as Kirsten said, or language combinations that have been, for which there are framework contracts, but that all the tenders, all the contractors have refused, then we can also go to this low value contract, which is a simplified form. But this is currently about 10% of our spending. Okay, so most of it is spent through the framework contracts, that some of you know. As any customer, we want value for money. And this is the way we have to do it. We are extremely careful. It's a very cumbersome procedure, you know that, but we really have no choice. So this is it for the moment for me, unless you have any burning question that cannot wait until the end of the presentation. I give the floor back to Kirsten, who will present the new call for tenders.
Yes, thank you, Mo. And now we come to the actual subject of this event, so the TRAD19. Before I'm going into details what this means, I would like to also explain you a bit the reasons behind. Those who worked already for DGT, you know that this TRAD19 for us and also for you is a change of paradigm. We had for almost 20 years worked with a system of dynamic ranking. We had long lists of up to 30 contractors per language combinations. We had this re-evaluation every month, so the dynamic ranking. And now we switch to a completely new system, a so-called CASCADE. The reason behind this change is because our needs are changing. Due to stagnation of staff, reduction of staff even, and the simultaneous increase of our workload, we have to outsource more. At the same time, our texts become longer, they become more complex, they become more urgent, and due to this, to the political nature of the text, we also get more versions. I indicated it already in the beginning. And we also observed in the last 3 years that we have capacity and quality problems on the side of our external contractors. And these problems, they lower our high standards, they somehow put at risk the business continuity, and they damage the Commission's reputation. So for us it was clear that we had to do something about it. And there is another feature, we observed a change on the market and on the behavior of the companies, because there are more and more companies who are, if I may say so, globalizing. So that means they focus more on the project management, but themselves outsource the actual translation jobs. So all these reasons, they made it necessary that we had to think about something new, and this is why we then decided to say farewell to the dynamic ranking system and go to this new, as we call it, cascade approach. Of course, we didn't want to just to jump into unknown waters with a big change. So in July last year, we launched a pilot project where we tested this approach. And the results were as such that we said, okay, yes, we go for it. We had, yes, a good result, a good success with this pilot. And this is why we change it. Oops. Okay. So what does it mean now, this cascade system? This means that we will have up to 5 contractors per language combination instead of the long lists we had before, and without any change in the initial ranking. So there will be no dynamic ranking anymore. The initial order will be maintained during the whole contract duration. Another change is that the duration of the contract will be over the whole period. So the contracts will enter into force on the 1st of July 2020, and they will end on the 29th of February 2024. But compared to what we had up to now, where we had renewable contracts every year, these contracts will be concluded for the whole period right from the beginning. Then, in order to establish this initial order ranking, we will organize tests. There will be case studies, translations, and revision tests. And we will talk about these tests a bit later. So, in short, this cascade system, let's say it with ABBA, the winner takes it all. That means the one who is ranked first is expected to take all the jobs offered. The other contractors will serve as a backup in case of quality problems or capacity problems. In our opinion, this type of contract enables us to communicate better and more directly with our external contractors, and we hope that in this way we can make them real partners. I come back to the issue of communication a bit later, but before I would like to tell you about another change. Monica already said that up to now we had a lot of language combinations covered via framework contracts. Based on the translation volumes of the last couple of years, we decided to reduce this number. That means in TRAD19, we would like to cover 49 lots with framework contracts. So this means we have, of course, the usual English into the other 23 EU official languages, then 19 language combinations into English, with the exception of Danish into English, Estonian into English, Irish and Maltese into English. We would like to have lots covered, German, Greek, Spanish, Italian, Dutch into French, and from French into German and Dutch. All other language combinations we will cover by the low-value contracts, the so-called negotiated procedure. Now coming back to the communication. With this contract, there is no longer a risk to distort the competition, since we have a main contractor who is supposed to take all the jobs. We are allowed to directly communicate with him. This communication will in principle be channeled through a quality coordinator. He or she would be the single contact point. And in our opinion, this direct communication will lead to a better understanding of needs and requirements on both sides. So we hope that we can explain better what we need and what we require, but on the other hand, that we could also understand better your needs, your requirements, your constraints. So this why we hope that it will also shorten a bit the learning curves, because it's for sure, for instance, for those who have not yet worked for us, okay, you would have to learn how we work, you would need to have an insight, okay, what are the exact quality requirements for specific texts and all that. And then we hope that in this way, the external, the contractors will become real partners. Another change compared to what we have up to now, it's the basis of work and quality control. In TRAD19, this basis will be the assignment, and this assignment can contain one or several documents which are listed in the order form. For the quality requirements, since this is so important, I will just read it out. So it means that the delivered assignment can be used as it stands upon delivery without further formatting, revision, review, or correction by DGT. Our linguistic and technical requirements cover, of course, accuracy, terminology should be right, grammar, yes, would be nice if it is correct, the same, the style should be appropriate, quotations should be correct, deadline compliance is very important, as I already said in the first part, since we are mainly dealing with legal text. If they are not submitted in time, we really run into serious problems. Formatting should be correct, and all the deliverables should be there. For the quality control, in order to ensure that the translations are up to the quality requirements of the tender specifications, all delivered assignments will be evaluated and they will be graded. There are 4 grades. There is a very good and an assignment which is graded very good, complies fully with the quality requirements, and there is either no intervention necessary or only minor intervention. An assignment will be graded good if it generally complies with the quality requirements. It may have a limited number of minor shortcomings, maybe with regard to 1 or more of them, and can require some intervention. Now we come to the insufficient. An assignment is graded insufficient if it falls short of the quality requirements. That means that there are frequent shortcomings, they are severe, and they really impair the overall usability and reliability of the assignment. So that means that a considerable revision effort is necessary to ensure that the assignment is really ready and fit for the intended purpose. And the very last one, and we do not hope that we get that much of it, is the unacceptable assignment. And this means that this assignment clearly does not meet the quality requirements. There are many shortcomings, they are severe, they are frequent, and they seriously impair the overall usability and reliability of the assignments. And this also would be a sign that there are considerable deficiencies in the professional diligence and or quality control on the side of the contractor. These assignments will require extensive revision, even retranslation, and this is why we are not going to pay for them. Information on the evaluation will be made public via or made available via the extra portal, and this information will also contain comments for you so that you then can take them into account for future assignments. On top of the evaluation of each assignment, we will go for a monthly performance assessment of the contract, because we would like to add an additional quality element and quality assessment. In this performance assessment, we will check the quality of the evaluated pages delivered in the previous month. So, and for the purpose of this assessment, an evaluated page is of sufficient quality, so it will get a pass mark if these pages were graded very good or good, and they will get a fail mark if they were graded insufficient or unacceptable. For this monthly assessment, we expect that at least 85% of the evaluated pages get a pass mark. If this is not the case, we will apply a penalty of 15% of the value of the assignments delivered during the months concerned. If it happens for a second time, within 9 months of the month N, we will apply a 30% penalty. And if it happened the third time, within the 9 months, it will be a 50% penalty, and we are going to terminate the contract. To be added that we somehow introduce a threshold. That means if in the month N fewer than 500 pages were delivered, the assessment will be suspended until these 500 pages are reached. And then the penalty, as I said already, will be calculated on the basis of the value of the assignments delivered in the whole period covered by the assessment. So these were the most important changes, features of the TRAD19 system. Do you have any questions now, really burning ones, because we have going to have an extensive question and answer session at the very end? No? Is there anything on Slido? No?
There's a lot, but
Not burning.
it's not surprising. We will have a,
not burning.
I'm sure we will have a very animated discussion later on, amongst others on this point. But let us now terminate our presentation by a few more technical aspects to give you the complete picture.
Okay, so then I hand over again to my colleague Monica.
Thank you, Kerstin. So I'll walk you now through the practicalities of tendering. You have realized that the deadline is very long. It's the longest ever. It was published yesterday, and the deadline runs until the 30th of August. Because we understand this is a very new approach, and we want to give you plenty of time to apply it. The evaluation will start in September. On the 16th of September, we'll have the opening committee, and there we'll know how many offers we have. So it's difficult to plan because it all depends on the volume of offers we receive. Who can tender? This hasn't changed. It's the same as before. EU citizens and any kind of legal persons or natural resident registered in the EU or Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Iceland, Liechtenstein, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Norway and Serbia, because they have special arrangements with the EU. Is there any UK registered potential tenderer here? Or we can skip the question about Brexit. Well, the answer is very easy. We don't know. It all depends on the evolution of the situation. So in principle, as long as the UK is a member, they can tender, and then we'll see. How to tender? You have to basically follow the annexes in that order. Sometimes we receive very creative offers, but I would recommend you to follow the order of the annexes. Every time, for example, subcontractors have to submit Annex 6, every subcontractor. Just print it, make copies, have them signed, and you will scan everything in the end. And when you have to submit evidence, just submit it in the section. We will find it eventually if you put it somewhere else, but we don't want to lose time. So please include all information, all tender documents, be accurate, and have the financial offer signed. So basically, this is as ever. Scan the whole tender in the end so that we can follow. We ask for 3 copies, original and 2 copies. This has proved useful. Sometimes there is a technical problem with the original or even with copy 1, and then finally we can open copy 2. So that's why we want these 3 copies for safety. Joint tenders. We don't receive many, but it's a possibility. In this case, is actually the only possibility for individuals to tender, given the volumes. So individuals can get together through one of these joint tenders that do not require any formal shape or legal shape at the beginning. And they appoint a leader that will be our contact point for any issue. And it's a possibility. Here, in this possibility, each member assumes joint and several liability towards DGT. And the leader will be the responsible for all management issues, because you will need a structure somehow if you apply for this tender. The group, if you change the composition, you have to tell us during the procedure, and we have to approve of it. The most common possibility is subcontracting, and also a possibility of both is possible. So we remind you that we have no direct legal commitment with the subcontractors, so the contractor will be always responsible in full for any aspect of the execution of the contract. You will have to include in the tender the contracts or prospective contracts, which means a draft, with every subcontractor. And every translator or reviser or reviewer that belongs to the team member is considered a subcontractor. In this tender, and this is already the case since Gen 11. I know other institutions have other interpretations, but this is the way we will do it here. Now, the evaluation, as you know, is a very complex procedure. There are 3 stages: the exclusion criteria, the selection, and the award. But this time we will start with the award criteria. That means that all of you who are interested in tender will be invited to see the tests. And only the ones that pass will be then examined about the selection criteria. So this is something new. We'll do it like this to maximize the chances and to minimize the work of the evaluation committee as well. So the exclusion criteria are complied with by the means of an annex. It is Annex 6 this time, which is standard in all procurement procedures. So it is a declaration on honor that applies to each member of the joint tender and to every subcontractor as well. So every subcontractor will have to sign this annex. The selection criteria, once you have passed the tests, consists of proving that you have the minimum capacity, the technical capacity, and the professional capacity. So for joint tenders, this is applied to the group as a whole, and for subcontracting to the tenderer plus the subcontractors jointly. And again, it will be done through a declaration of honor. This is the annual capacity. But it doesn't mean that there is any volume guaranteed. We don't know. The framework contract, as you know, doesn't set any volume. It is the order form or the specific contract that will set every time the terms of the assignment and the volume. So this was based on DGT's last year's translation and outsourcing figures, except for Irish, because there is a special case, as you know. So this is all spelled out on the specifications. These are some examples about minimum and maximum capacity. But the figures are on the specifications. We won't go through that now. The technical capacity is, again, a declaration of honor, and there you declare that you can handle particular formats, use certain tools, you're able to create invoices and backups, as it's specified in Article 14.2 of the specifications. Now, the professional capacity. It will be again a declaration on honor. So in the past, we used to ask for hard evidence. This time it is different. We will ask you to sign a declaration of honor, and then we can, of course, always check and request evidence during the tendering procedure or during the execution of the contract, anytime. But all members of the team must fulfill the requirements. The requirements are different for the translators, revisers, and reviewers, and for the quality coordinator. Again, as before, the weight of the quality criteria, which are the tests which will be marked, are 70% of the final note. And we are still the only institution giving as much weight for the quality. And the rest, 30% will be your price. The revision test that will be marked in the first place, we will follow this order. First the revision, then the translation, and at the end the case study. The revision test will be about 6 pages. The translation test will be about 1.5 pages, and the case study, well, it's a case with a realistic scenario where you have to solve a certain management problem. And you will have 4 hours per test. The test will be simultaneous online, so you absolutely need at least 3 people, 1 per test. So there is no one who can do 2 tests or do the test for more than 1 tenderer. The revision and the translation are, of course, lot specific, but not the case study. If you tender for several lots, you will have to sit the case study only once. This is different from the pilots we learned from our experience. And the revision test must be taken by the coordinator for that lot. Now, if you have appointed the same coordinator for more than 1 lot, he or she must take at least 1 of the revision tests, and then the tenderer will appoint other individuals that must be on the revision list. On the reviser's list, sorry. So these are the points and the pass score. You have to pass every test. So this is the old formula that we have been using for many years now. I won't go through it, but you know that you will always be compared to the maximum mark and to the minimum price, so that we get the best quality price ratio. So you can always write to us if you have questions during the tendering procedure. We will publish the questions, so keep an eye on the questions and answer. And this is our email, so in a few days you will receive an answer. We count upon updating the questions and answer a couple of times per week. Do you have any question right now about this? Did you have time to read the specifications since yesterday? They are shorter than ever, I think. And they are more structured as well. We have made an effort to make them